In a development that has taken Hollywood and global audiences by storm, Johnny Depp, the ever-enigmatic, deeply revered, and often unpredictable icon of modern cinema, has once again proven that he is the master of reinvention and surprise. Known for decades as one of the most transformative actors in the world, Depp's latest revelation has left fans in a state of both shock and admiration. In an exclusive announcement that reverberated through entertainment media, the actor revealed not only a major career shift, but also a deeply personal revelation that has changed the way the world sees him. What began as whispers on social media has now exploded into an international phenomenon, leaving even his most dedicated followers stunned, emotional, and reflective. The morning began like any other for the millions of fans who have followed Johnny Depp's storied career. Social media feeds were filled with classic movie tributes, fan art, and nostalgic clips of his most memorable roles. Captain Jack Sparrow's swaggering charm, Edward Scissorhands' gentle sadness, the eccentric brilliance of Willy Wonka, and the haunting depth of Sweeney Todd. Then, almost without warning, an official press statement appeared on Depp's verified channels, teasing a personal message that marks a new chapter. Within minutes, hashtags such as Depp Revelation, Johnny Returns, and the shock of the year began trending worldwide. What came next was beyond anyone's imagination. Standing against a simple black backdrop in a recorded video, Johnny Depp addressed his fans directly for the first time in months. There were no elaborate sets, no Hollywood glitz, only the man himself, raw and unfiltered. With calm sincerity and a glimmer of emotion in his voice, he began to speak. He thanked his fans for their unwavering support through his highs and lows, through his silence and resurgence, and then he dropped the bombshell. "I've spent years playing characters, exploring worlds that existed beyond myself," he said softly. "But for the first time in decades, I'm ready to step away from acting, at least for a while, and return to something I left unfinished long ago. This isn't the end of my story, but the beginning of something far more personal." The statement was as shocking as it was poetic. Johnny Depp, the chameleon of cinema, the man whose entire life had revolved around transforming into others, was taking a step back from the acting world that had made him a global legend. But as fans struggled to process the news of his temporary retirement from film, Depp revealed something even more unexpected. He was channeling his creativity into a deeply personal project that intertwined music, art, and storytelling in a way that reflected his true self. "There are parts of me that never found their voice," he said. "Now it's time to listen to them." Sources close to Depp later confirmed that the actor had spent the past several years quietly working on an autobiographical art and music project titled Whispers of the Storm. The project, reportedly spanning a double album, visual art exhibition, and an accompanying documentary, would explore his life from his earliest days of struggle in Kentucky to his turbulent rise through Hollywood's glare. But even more shocking was the personal dimension. Depp revealed that the inspiration came from a profound life change he had kept private, a reconciliation with his estranged family members, and a renewed commitment to living away from the chaos of fame. For a man long associated with controversy and media storms, it was a revelation that stunned both fans and critics alike. Within hours, entertainment networks across the world were scrambling to cover the story. Headlines screamed variations of the same sentiment. Johnny Depp steps away from Hollywood and opens his heart. For many, the announcement was a mixture of heartbreak and hope. Fans who had dreamed of seeing him return as Captain Jack Sparrow in another Pirates of the Caribbean film, or as Gellert Grindelwald in future Fantastic Beasts installments, were suddenly confronted with the idea of a world where Depp might not grace the silver screen, at least for the foreseeable future. Yet amid the shock, there was also admiration. His decision, bold and unorthodox, carried the kind of authenticity that only Johnny Depp could deliver. Industry insiders described the move as both surprising and admirable. A longtime friend of Depp's, speaking under condition of anonymity, explained, "Johnny's always been more than an actor. He's a poet, a painter, a musician, an artist in the truest sense. This decision isn't a retreat. It's a homecoming. He's finally turning inward, expressing the parts of himself he's always kept hidden. Fans, too, echoed this sentiment, flooding online spaces with emotional messages and tributes. Many described his revelation as beautifully human, while others expressed gratitude that he was prioritizing his mental and emotional health after years of public battles and scrutiny. The personal element of Depp's announcement added even greater depth to the story. In his video message, he alluded to having reconnected with people who had once been distant from his life, particularly his children, Lily Rose and Jack Depp, whom he described as the anchors that have kept me afloat. For years, Depp's relationship with his family had been a subject of speculation, often clouded by his turbulent legal disputes and public controversies. But now, speaking with a sense of calm clarity, he shared that fatherhood and reflection had reshaped his view of fame and purpose. "I realize that the characters I've played taught me something profound," he said. "But the most important role I've ever had isn't one that was written. It's being a father, a friend, and a creator of truth, not illusion." The revelation hit home for fans who had long seen Depp as more than a celebrity. For them, he represented the soul of artistic rebellion, a man who defied Hollywood's rigid molds and dared to be vulnerable, eccentric, and unapologetically different. His new direction felt like a natural evolution of that spirit, a continuation of the authenticity that had defined his best work. Still, the idea of his stepping back from acting was difficult to grasp. After all, Johnny Depp without acting felt almost unthinkable, like Van Gogh without a brush or Dylan without a song. Yet in his own poetic way, Depp framed the shift not as a goodbye, but as a transformation. "Every artist must sometimes walk away from the stage," he said. "Not because the story is over, but because there's another one waiting to be told. A story you can only hear when the noise stops." The entertainment community's reaction was swift and passionate. Directors who had worked with him, from Tim Burton to Terry Gilliam, shared heartfelt messages praising his courage and individuality. Burton, who directed Depp in several iconic roles, told reporters, "Johnny's always had the heart of a painter. Every character he played was a canvas. I think this next chapter will be his masterpiece." Fellow actors expressed both sadness and admiration, calling his revelation the kind of truth Hollywood rarely allows. Even longtime collaborators in the music industry, including surviving members of his band, Hollywood Vampires, hinted that the new project could be his most ambitious creative undertaking yet, blending sound, imagery, and storytelling in ways never seen before. But while the announcement sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry, it also touched on something deeply human, the idea of rediscovery, forgiveness, and inner peace. For fans who had followed Depp through his tumultuous years of legal battles, public scrutiny, and personal struggles, this revelation felt like a healing moment. Gone was the shadow of scandal and courtroom drama. In its place stood a man reclaiming his narrative with quiet dignity. "I'm not running from anything," Depp said in his closing remarks. "I'm simply walking towards something I left behind, myself." The impact of those words reverberated far beyond Hollywood. Media analysts observed that the announcement marked one of the most significant personal reinventions in modern celebrity history. In an age where stars often cling to fame at all costs, Depp's decision to step away voluntarily, not out of defeat, but out of reflection, stood out as a rare act of authenticity. Psychologists even weighed in, noting that his transformation could inspire broader conversations about mental health, identity, and the pressure of public life. Johnny Depp's decision represents a shift from external validation to internal fulfillment. One cultural analyst remarked, "It's the kind of honesty that resonates deeply in a world obsessed with image." Meanwhile, fans around the world organized spontaneous tributes, virtual events, and artistic collaborations in his honor. Online digital galleries began appearing, featuring paintings, poems, and songs inspired by his career and his courage to change course. In London, a group of fans gathered outside the National Portrait Gallery, holding candles and banners reading, "Thank you for being real." In Tokyo, a film festival dedicated an entire evening to his greatest performances, followed by a discussion about the impact of his latest revelation on global pop culture. Across continents, the message was clear. Johnny Depp may be stepping away from acting, but his influence was stronger than ever. As the news cycle unfolded, more details about Whispers of the Storm emerged, revealing a breathtaking scope. Sources described it as a cross-media narrative experience, part album, part documentary, part exhibition, blending live performances, intimate storytelling, and original artwork painted by Depp himself. Each piece reportedly corresponds to a pivotal moment in his life, from his early struggles as a young musician in Florida to his battles with fame and identity. The project, set to debut in Europe before touring internationally, was described as a soul laid bare. In an interview released days after the announcement, Depp explained, "I've spent years telling other people's stories. This is the first time I'm telling mine." But perhaps the most unexpected part of his revelation was the personal peace that seemed to radiate from him. Those who had seen the video noted a subtle but unmistakable shift. A man no longer burdened by the weight of public expectation. His tone, calm and grounded, reflected someone who had endured storms and emerged not bitter but wiser. The Johnny Depp who once embodied chaos, rebellion, and eccentricity now spoke with the quiet intensity of a man who had finally found stillness. "Life isn't about the noise we make," he said. "It's about the echoes we leave behind." For many, the shock of his announcement was followed by reflection. Fans revisited his past films, reinterpreting his characters in light of his words. The misunderstood tenderness of Edward Scissorhands, the defiant spirit of Jack Sparrow, the melancholy poetry of Sweeney Todd, all seemed to carry new meaning now. Critics began to draw connections between his roles and his real-life journey, suggesting that perhaps Depp had been revealing parts of himself through his characters all along. "He's always been playing himself in fragments," wrote one columnist. Each character was a confession disguised as fiction. Weeks after the initial announcement, the cultural impact continued to grow. Music platforms reported record pre-orders for his upcoming album, while art institutions began preparing for what was expected to be one of the most significant celebrity exhibitions in years. Interviews with collaborators described the project as hauntingly honest, with one producer revealing that some tracks feature recordings of Depp reading personal letters he had written but never sent. The rawness of the material, they said, captured the essence of his journey, from fame and failure to rediscovery and redemption. As journalists and fans alike attempted to unpack the deeper meaning of Johnny Depp's revelation, one theme became clear. This was not a story of withdrawal but of rebirth. It was the story of an artist daring to strip away his masks and stand, perhaps for the first time, as himself. The shock lay not just in the announcement itself, but in the vulnerability it represented, the courage to change direction when the world expects you to stay the same. In an era of curated perfection and celebrity facades, Johnny Depp's honesty was the ultimate act of rebellion. In the following months, anticipation built for the official premiere of Whispers of the Storm. Previews described it as an immersive experience blending live music, visual storytelling, and deeply personal narration. In early interviews, Depp hinted that while he wasn't closing the door on acting forever, his focus had shifted toward truth and creation in its purest form. "I may act again," he said, "but only when I have something real to say. For now, my voice belongs to me." The announcement's emotional ripple effect also prompted an unexpected wave of public forgiveness. Even some of Depp's harshest critics acknowledged the courage behind his transformation. Columnists who once wrote scathing pieces about his controversies began to recognize the humanity of his reinvention. The narrative surrounding Johnny Depp, once dominated by scandal and speculation, was now being rewritten as one of reflection and redemption. His journey had evolved from tabloid fodder into a universal story about resilience, art, and the rediscovery of self. By the time the first promotional images of Whispers of the Storm were released, depicting Depp standing alone in a misty landscape holding a paintbrush and guitar, the world had already embraced the next chapter of his legacy. It was no longer about Hollywood blockbusters or box office numbers. It was about a man finding meaning beyond fame, and in doing so, inspiring millions to do the same. Johnny Depp's career has always defied definition, a tapestry of contradictions, beauty, and chaos. His revelation has only added another layer to that tapestry, one woven with introspection, authenticity, and courage. The shock that fans initially felt has gradually transformed into admiration, and the surprise has turned into anticipation for what comes next. In a culture that thrives on predictability, Johnny Depp has once again proven that he remains one of the last true originals, an artist who refuses to be caged by expectation and who continues to live, love, and create entirely on his own terms. As the lights dim on one chapter of his career and rise on another, the world watches in awe. Johnny Depp's story, filled with turbulence, triumph, and now transcendence, reminds us that even legends are human, and that sometimes the most shocking revelations come not from scandal, but from sincerity. His fans may have been stunned, but beneath the shock lies something deeper, a renewed sense of connection to the man behind the myth. Because in the end, the greatest surprise Johnny Depp ever gave his fans wasn't a role, a film, or a performance. It was himself, unmasked, unfiltered, and finally free. Friends, subscribe the channel, and I wish you good luck. You should take care of yourself.